Turning our attention now to the coronavirus pandemic. As the number of COVID cases continues to climb in Alabama, the percentage of tests that are positive is also increasing. You're taking a look at the latest data from the Alabama Department of Public Health. WAAY 31's Will Robinson Smith has been periodically checking in with a local diagnostic lab, Diatherix Eurofins, throughout this pandemic. He joins us live from Hudson Alpha after learning where the lab says we are now with testing at this point in the pandemic. Will?
Yeah, that's right, Dan. At this point, many of us have become familiar with the PCR test. That's where a nurse will take one of these swabs and stick it at an uncomfortable distance up your nasal cavity, I should say, and then they'll stick it in a plastic vial like this and send it off to a testing lab. Now, when I spoke with the president of Diatherix Eurofins, she says that even though they're small, plastic things like this are an important part of the supply chain and something they're keeping a close eye on.
It has been a pounding intensity since really before March.
Diatherix Eurofins president Jennifer Cart makes no bones about what the pandemic has been like for folks in labs like hers.
We launched our test March 17th. But before then, our R&D team and clinical lab were all, validating and we were preparing. We were getting ready, essentially, to go to battle. And that battle has not stopped.
Since then, WAAY 31 has checked in with them a couple of times over the spring and summer to see how they've been able to ramp up their testing capacity as the virus spreads across the country. She says being a part of a global company has helped to keep them ahead of the curve when it comes to their supplies.
We all keep an inventory spreadsheet, and so when we see that we're short something, we check around and then we can get things from sister labs.
Early on in the pandemic, the part of the supply chain that testing labs were really watching were reagents. Nowadays, it's plastics like these, and labs like Diatherix Eurofins are keeping a close eye on their supply chain. This lab in particular, though, says it has a good supply on hand for the next wave to come over the course of the fall and the winter. Cart says tips are part of a selection of plastics that they constantly check to make sure they will have as much as they think they will need.
Tips of plastics go on many different instruments, pipettes, the robots, etc. Different size tips, but ultimately there's only so many of the manufacturers, manufacturing those.
Adding those robotics she mentioned is another way the lab has worked to improve its testing capacity over the last few months.
The robots are intended to do some of the people's jobs. So essentially transferring a specimen or moving reagents into wells, the robots assist with that. So it's a little bit more consistent, and it reduces the amount of human motion and movement that needs to take place.
With winter and flu season coming, Cart says there will likely be a higher demand for testing because more people will want to know if their symptoms mean influenza or COVID-19.
There'll be a shift away from what was a single target COVID to say you either have COVID or don't have COVID, whether you're symptomatic or not. Now it's going to be, I'm sick, I don't know what it is, I want to know which virus.
And Cart says globally the Eurofins company has done more than 1 million PCR tests to date for COVID-19. She says typically these tests are done for people that are showing symptoms, but on average the PCR tests are one of the more reliable tests, either whether you have symptoms or not. Reporting live at Hudson Alpha in Huntsville, Will Robinson Smith, WAAY 31 News.